Good morning. So if you're somebody who really wants to help national security be more successful in business and have more career satisfaction, then you might be interested in what I'm going to talk about today. So in a world where anxiety is very high and trust is very low, how can better understanding supply chains help national security, help economic growth, help business success, and increase career satisfaction? So while GDCA has sponsored my presence here today I'm really going to talk about something that I have learned that has really helped me understand why I'm really in business beyond just helping make a living for my team and me, and also there's retirement. So years ago when I started working at GDCA and leading the company, I really was focused on manufacturing excellence. GDCA manufactures obsolete computer cards, and I felt that if we could be really good at manufacturing old board designs, then we would be really well positioned to make our profitability and growth goals. So at that time, we had a one up, one down view of our supply chain and our place in the world, and we felt that our real challenge was just partnering with the OEM, restarting production lines, and finding parts so that we could basically produce production orders. But then we had an order that really changed everything for us. So the company was a Tier 2 defense contractor, and they needed an obsolete processor PMC card that went into an intranet that goes on a plane. So true to form, we went and partnered with the OEM, and then we were able to restart the production line and deliver the order. And of course, there was a lot of obsolescence on it, so we were able to do a heroic effort and substitute out some obsolete RAM, and success. We were able to deliver the product. And then 2 years later, when the customer came back for more product, that was a surprise to us, we found that the RAM that we had substituted out was completely obsolete again, so we did another heroic effort, and this time was a little bit harder than the last time, but again, success. We delivered the order, and we were really happy with that. And then we learned that the customer's customer was the United States Air Force, and that they were going to need this product for at least another 8 years. And so this is when the penny dropped for us, and that's when we realized that actually success for us was not delivering a production order. Success for us was delivering supply chain resilience so that customers could continue getting their products for as long as they need it. So why is supply chain resilience important? What's at stake? Well, as it happens, there is a lot at stake. The world, as we all know, is a very, very scary place right now. In a community of more than 190 nations in the world, the United States and our allies are facing what I would consider, and others would, an existential crisis. We're facing a lot of really big challenges. First off, we've got globalization. I think on the good side, we as humanity have really developed some mind-blowing technologies across borders and across nations. But unfortunately, this also means that we have to work together. Nobody can stand alone, right? So we're going to have to work together across different borders. Okay, a bunch of years ago, I was lamenting to one of my managers, who was my manager at the time, how hard it was to manage people. And she said to me, "Ethan, you can do a lot more with a team than you can by yourself." And I think if she had a microphone, she probably would have just dropped it right there and walked out of the room. But the impact was big on me. That was when I really understood that the potential of a diverse set of people and personalities on the team would be really, really powerful if only we can all just work together. Other challenges, culture wars. Okay, so there seems to be this politician and media-driven notion that everything and anything can and should be politically divisive, right? This is crazy, but I'm a big fan of the Game of Thrones series, and I also like the Lord of the Rings series. So in 2022, I was really stoked when sequels came out to both of those things. And then the news articles started coming out, and it was crazy. It was Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. Which side are you on? Pick a side. And I'm just like, well, this is ridiculous. But we seem to be eating this stuff up over and over again. I think other issues that we have, the rate of technology change. We can all relate to this. I think anybody who's really familiar with the book Future Shock, it's a seminal work, is really, the rate of technology change is really the problem. It's not just about learning new tools, it's about learning about the impacts and benefits of these tools. And we need to be able to do that at an incredible rate so that we are not left behind and then obsolete in our own lifetimes. I was listening to a radio program a while ago, and one of the panelists was asked, given the uptake of social media and Twitter and LinkedIn, what would you say to somebody who says, I don't want to use social media, I'm not going to do it? And the panelist was pretty funny. He said, well, I respect your opinion on that. And I really respect your position, and maybe I'll see you around, or maybe I won't. So I think that we ignore changing the way we work and technology at our own peril. Workforce issues, that's a huge supply chain issue. I think that anybody who has hired an engineer recently knows how difficult this can be. And personally, from a home improvement perspective, I even had trouble finding a general contractor to fix my roof recently after really working with a couple that were not very trustworthy at all. But my home improvement horror stories really do pale in comparison with the US Navy. Recently, the GAO announced that the Virginia-class Block 5 ballistic or attack subs, that each one of those were going to be taking at least 2 years longer to build than previously anticipated, all because of workforce issues, which I think is really interesting in a nation of more than 300 million people, that adding one more submarine to the schedule is really a strain. And I think that's a really good example of efficiency over resilience. Another challenge, I'm gonna keep it rolling on the gloom side. We've got climate contamination, environmental contamination. Now, whether or not you think that climate change is man-made, I think we cannot deny how much stuff we are foisting, how much contamination we're foisting into the environment. I mean, whether it's these PFAS, these forever chemicals, or microplastics, or now nanoplastics in all of our bottled water, you can't deny that there's just a lot more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And I think that given our ability to kind of blanket the earth with plastics and with PFAS, I mean, why can't we blanket the atmosphere with exhaust from what we burn? Indeed, I am extremely confident in humanity's ability to destroy the planet. If you think about it, for those who might not know, Iceland, when it was settled about 900 years ago, was 25 to 40% forest. And by the mid-20th century, it was down to less than 1%. And that was just a bunch of guys with saws and axes, right? NASA has basically said that greenhouse gas emissions are increasing at a rate of 250 times faster than they were from natural sources after the last ice age, which just goes to show what 8 billion people can do if they all work together. Lest everybody go and make their way up to the 12th floor and find a ledge to jump off of, let's go ahead and wrap up this list of great challenges. But I gotta finish up with one big one, and that is the rise of peer adversaries, particularly China. So since the Cold War and the fall of the Soviet Union, no government has threatened Western democracies as much as the PRC. China has positioned itself as a global powerhouse in commercial manufacturing, and they also exercise a very uncomfortable level of control over defense supply chains. Indeed, Bloomberg, just as late as November of 2023, talked about that China's really got a lock on 20 really critical raw materials. And putting aside lithium, which is very important for all of our EVs, if you look at dysprosium, which is a rare earth element responsible for lasers, lighting, and nuclear reactors, China is responsible for 84% of the mined production and 100% of the finished product. So this is quite chilling. So, but all is not lost, right? So stepping back, I think it's a tough problem, and if you look at all of these problems individually, it can be extremely daunting. But I like to think about a quote that I heard that Dwight D. Eisenhower said way back in the day, and he said, "Whenever I come across a problem that is really hard, I always make it bigger. I can never solve the problem by making it smaller, but if I make it bigger, I can begin to see the outlines of a solution." So channeling Eisenhower and looking at supply chains in a larger way, we start to see the really inevitable intersection between national security and economic strength, between defense systems and commercial equipment. Okay? And the embedded OEMs that make these great innovative products, right? They control every defense system and commercial system. And a really typical factor that undermines resilient supply chains is electronics obsolescence. Okay, so obsolescence is defined as the discontinuation of a product from the original manufacturer. Okay, when OEMs discontinue products, it creates problems. Let's look at national defense. In 2022, the DoD, the government, spent $7.66 billion on national defense. That's about 12% of defense spending. And when discontinuation notices hit those programs, it introduces brand new costs that were unbudgeted for last time buy notices and technology refresh. And that sends programs into a huge scramble because there's not enough money to go around. Programs end up going without. And also they're prime contractor suppliers. This is the same treadmill. So as a result, this really does create a lot of mission-ready issues. There's fewer mission-ready systems, and it does degrade national defense. But that's just defense. Let's talk about what happens when obsolescence hits patients, right? So cochlear implants, since their real big uptake in the 1980s, they have really transformed the lives of people who are considered profoundly deaf. They cost about $50,000 to $100,000 for the initial implant, and in the United States at least, they're largely covered by insurance. Abroad, they're mainly covered by government programs and government services. But what happens when people cannot afford the mandatory upgrades? And there are mandatory upgrades for cochlear implants. Well, I mean, I'll tell you what happens. People lose their hearing. And this is happening much more in developing countries than in the States, but it really is impacting people. And I think it brings home the impact of supply chain disruptions on everybody, both individually and collectively, from the top down, at governments, businesses, employees, and their families. And the net result, at least in the United States, is that every US citizen is somehow paying for these supply chain disruptions. Either it's taxpayer dollars or less money to spend on other government services. It's a real problem. Okay. And the collective response by industry of obsolescence creates real problems and sows mistrust throughout the embedded computing industry. Discontinuation and even extension, in many cases, of legacy products causes win-lose situations and real hardships for customers and really undermines the economic viability and feasibility of many different types of organizations, including companies. Okay, when OEMs discontinue products, it destroys trust. What do I mean when I talk about trust? Okay, trust in business. I reflect on a model that a buddy of mine years ago turned me on to, and it is the Hill, Skill, Will, Trustworthy matrix, right? So basically, you can verify someone's trustworthiness or a company using this checklist. Okay, Hill, do they understand what it takes for me to be successful? Okay. Skill, do they have the ability to do what it takes to do that thing, to climb the hill? And then finally, will, do they have the motivation? Do they want to do the work to be successful? Okay, that's the Hill, Skill, Will matrix. And when OEMs discontinue products, right, it really does destroy trust. Okay, so why is motive so important, okay, when you're talking about the will aspect? Okay, let's think about it this way. What if your house is on fire and your neighbor pulls out their hose and they help you fight the fire? You're really grateful. I would be. But what if you later learn that the only reason why they helped you fight the fire was so that their house didn't catch on fire, and they probably would not have helped you if that was not a danger? You would probably still be grateful, but you might have a little bit of a different opinion of your neighbor. So, indeed, customers are trusting OEMs to continue supporting them for as long as they need their products. And OEMs are trusting customers to understand the world as they see it, which is, look, we cannot support every product we have ever introduced for as long as the last customer needs it. That is indeed a very heavy lift. So, do customers forgive OEMs for discontinuing products? Right? I think many do. They don't even care. They just want the latest and greatest. But for customers who really have a big hardship, they do care a lot. And their willingness to forgive is really a reflection of how much hardship it creates and their awareness of other options. Ta-da. Okay, so for companies throughout the embedded computing ecosystem, right, there have emerged a category of companies that are here to help with an alternative to the win-lose situations from traditional obsolescence management solutions, and those are legacy equipment manufacturers, or LEMs. Okay, for customers who really cannot afford and make a business case for an upgrade, LEMs are being used increasingly more so that they can get access to parts. Okay, for them, this is a real refreshing alternative to their unavailability of parts. Let's rip something from the headlines. Last week, I was on a call with a PM from a prime, and she described the prospect of working with an LEM as a, quote, get-out-of-jail-free card. Right? Think about that. Right? How trapped must she and her team have felt that they understood their situation as like being captive, held in jail? Very, very stressful. Okay? And OEMs are increasingly using LEMs so that they can say no to lower value, hard to make legacy orders. They can satisfy their customer goodwill ideals, and then they can continuously refine the way they do business. That's a lot to take in. So I was recently looking at an article, and it was by Warren Buffett. It was about Warren Buffett's 3 critical business success, factors. I love these articles. And anybody, by the way, whose nickname is the Sage of Omaha instantly gets my attention. And so the first thing he posited was, you got to say no more often. If you say yes to too many things, then you are diffused from your goal. The second thing was operate with integrity, right? So anybody who compromises their values, what they really care about, under pressure is really not necessarily acting in the best interest of the team. And the third thing that he said was learn something new every day. Okay, and so I think I read something, he said it was like 500 pages a week is what he reads. which I did the math, and that's about 2,000 phone swipes. But unfortunately for me, and I think the rest of us, Facebook doesn't count. So, but I will say that indeed, OEMs who use LEMs are now able to, and have found that they can say no without sacrificing customer goodwill. They can stay focused on their mission, which is new products. And they can constantly refine and improve the way that they work, which I think is absolutely in the spirit of learn something new every day. So I will just go ahead and say, in that light, it seems that LEMs would be very much get the approval of the Sage of Omaha. So, but bringing it all back in conclusion to the big solution, I think we're going to all need a real level of trust and open discussion for us to establish the resilient supply chains we need to overcome these monumental challenges. And I'm going to go ahead and quote Benjamin Franklin, who was purported to have said when he signed the Declaration of Independence, "We must all hang together, or most assuredly, we will all hang separately." So given our track record of doing great things, right, for the good of our country, our friends, our allies, and our democratic ideals, I think we can all be very optimistic. Thank you.